So, the chapter picks up directly after Maharanga's appearance in 229, except this time we are seeing it all through the perspective of our spectators and the broadcast. Now, Maharanga is exclaimed as a Zenin secret weapon by Meimei, but Choso's immediate follow-up stating its abilities makes me question just how secret the weapon is. As Gojo puts it all the way back in the hidden inventory arc, family techniques can only remain so secret amongst the large clans, seeing as there's bound to be leaks. Now the big question is just how it had adapted to Unlimited Void, despite the fact the wheel was nowhere near Sukuna, and Maharanga had not only been summoned after the domain expansion sure hit, but also didn't spin the wheel. So if it wasn't Maharanga or Sukuna taking these hits, who exactly was? Well, this is figured out pretty quickly by Gojo. After increasing his 6 eyes technique, take a closer look at Sukuna and the souls within, which is actually our first time seeing through the perspective of a 6 eyes user. I almost wish we had seen this back in the Shibuya arc. I digress. Megumi had taken the previous 5 hits of Unlimited Void, charged the wheel. But wait, what about the sure hit techniques cancelling out with every domain expansion during this battle? I find that this explanation wasn't written the best, but I'll try to provide my own interpretation for it. It seems that this cancellation could have not occurred for Megumi, as he wasn't casting a domain himself, so there's no overlapping sure hit to negate and protect him. Even if in technicality he did use his domain expansion, it's borderless and doesn't grant a guaranteed hit, therefore he wouldn't be protected. Sukuna can also avoid having Megumi hit by Malevolent Shrine, while Gojo's will hit everything in Unlimited Void's borders besides Gojo and those in physical contact with him. Sukuna sends Maharanga back into the shadows and takes this opportunity to taunt Gojo. As always, he is quick to refute, pointing out the hypocrisy and desperation of Sukuna to use Maharanga. It honestly felt like Gege was just quoting Gojo fans. Maybe art does imitate life. I honestly will say though, it's hard to argue that Sukuna's activation of the 10 Shadows technique was entirely out of desperation, as he's clearly planned all along to secretly combat Gojo's technique doing so. We were hinted at this back in chapter 228 when we saw the wheel turn, so this just further reinforces it. Sukuna goes on to admit that his goal this far has been ridding Gojo of his domain expansion, so obviously we're entering a new stage of the fight. Sukuna notes that he hasn't been able to use domain techniques aside from what's given to the domain, a detail Gojo had actually pointed out in 228 as well. Gojo knew something was off about their battle, just couldn't pin it until Maharanga was already activated. This is where the chapter begins to take a twist though. Gojo, in his damaged state, goes for a domain expansion to finish off Maharanga in a single blow, but is hit by a sudden nosebleed, and his domain collapses, after Sukuna states that he can't open his domain again with a cocky grin. Sukuna begins to explain that curse techniques are engraved around the right prefrontal cortex, a piece of information previously revealed by Shoko earlier on in the series. So for anyone claiming that there's been a lot of ass pulls in this fight, thus far, Gojo and Sukuna have only expanded upon previously known concepts. Obviously, the point is that Gojo has been relying on using his reverse technique to repair damage to the brain far too much, something he's been doing since directly after the hidden inventory arc, where he learns to keep his limitless ability active 24/7 by automatically repairing his brain. After 5 domain expansions though, it caught up to him. Sukuna, on a powerful new high, believing he had defeated Gojo, begins ranting about just how mediocre Gojo is as a sorcerer and how he will end this battle. To everyone's shock, especially Sukuna's, his domain collapses and blood pours from his eyes and nose, displaying even more damage to Sukuna's brain and Gojo. Honestly, when I had clicked onto this page, I was completely blown away. I did not expect this in the slightest. I didn't think that the fight was just going to end here, but I also didn't expect that Sukuna would eat his words a moment after ranting. And all of this was from being hit by Unlimited Void for less than 10 seconds. Depending on the translation you read, the specific line switches between Sukuna having been hit only 10 seconds ago and him being hit for less than 10 seconds. It seems, however, with the Viz translation released, a lot of sources have corrected to for less than 10 seconds. So both opponents have taken serious damage to their prefrontal cortexes as a result of the reverse curse technique. Gojo takes this moment to look like a badass once again and proclaim that he's going to win for his students. Despite their domain expansions being rendered unusable, Gojo shocks Sukuna by pulling him with the blue technique, with a hit directly to his face, ending the chapter with the two powerhouses smiling at each other. So specifically about this fight in chapter, I think there's some important things to discuss and make note of. First of which being that we still don't have an understanding of Sukuna's innate curse technique. Seen a lot of confusion in the community that dismantle and cleave are his innate technique. If we go back to chapter 115, we learn that this just isn't entirely the case. When Sukuna initially activated his ability, showing us a black box in chanting open, he was able to manifest Jogo's flame technique. Gojo was met with the same confusion, questioning that Sukuna's curse technique was supposed to be slicing and slashing everything. So obviously in some fashion, Sukuna is able to copy other curse techniques, with this sort of black box ability. While many will say this black box is a censor to hide from the viewers what his actual ability is, I don't believe it. Even from the writing perspective, it seems that anything in place of this box wouldn't give away the ability, as Jogo remains confused afterward, and Sukuna states he won't reveal his curse technique as to not cheat. Furthering this, Geji's previous manga, number 9, saw the main character summoning a black box using the same exact symbol and chanting Fuga, just like Sukuna. Chapter 230, the part of the brain relative to curse techniques, is also described as a black box. This is a term used for technology that's contents are mysterious to the user. I also believe it plays into Sukuna's innate technique. Obviously, despite Sukuna being from an older era, is able to understand just how the brain works in relation to curse techniques. This leads me to believe his very own innate technique can etch other techniques otherwise impossible to use into his own brain, likely leaving the possibility open as well to etch these other techniques into his domain expansion, meaning that it's not limited to only slashes. This of course is just my speculation based on what I've seen and my understanding of it. Overall, I find it kind of hard to believe that this fight will end in a fashion that we expect it to. While JJK is set to end this year, Gojo flat out being the victor of this duel seems like the turnaround would be too much of a quick end for the series, as Kenjaku is light work for Gojo. I personally expect there to be another major turn in this battle that forces a contingency plan or some unexpected event to take place. Not to say that I think Gojo will die, or even technically lose, just that we can't entirely predict what Gege would do. However, I want to hear all your thoughts and opinions down below. How do you guys expect this fight to end? As always, thanks for watching, and have a great week.